joining us now with an in-depth look at the federal election campaign is John Capobianco, political strategist and senior vice president and Fleishman Hillard Highroad, a conservative strategist, we should note. John, thank you so much for joining us. It's good to have you on, as always.
Thanks, Lena. Good to be on.
So just before we came to you, we were telling our viewers the White House is announcing that President Donald Trump is going to speak to Americans, and he is expected to announce tariffs on the auto sector. No word yet on how this is going to impact the Canadian auto industry. You know, Donald Trump is not on the ballot, but he certainly is driving the discussions on the campaign trail. How do you expect the party leaders to respond to this latest development, John?
Yeah, he might not be on the ballot, Lena, but I'm sure he is very much in part of the discussion and the discourse. Now that the election campaign is in full swing, day three and a half, actually, since the election's been called, and all the political leaders are out there talking about the economy and economic issues and tax cuts. And it's interesting to see, you know, of course, you'd expect tax cuts to come from the Conservatives and the Liberals, but when you get the Green Party and the NDP talking about tax cuts, you know the economy is first and foremost on their minds, and more importantly, on the minds of Canadians. But to your point about President Trump, you know, it's not a surprise. We know that April 2nd was the date that he had picked for those retaliatory tariffs to come into effect. We've been hearing now last day or so that it might not be as stark as we once thought, or at least as high as we might thought. And again, those are just comments from people that we're hearing in the U.S. We haven't heard from the president yet on this, other than he's talking about some auto sector tariffs. That's big news for us, obviously, because the auto sector is huge here in Canada. In Ontario specifically. So I would imagine that all the political leaders are going to be ready for that. I know that they are very much attuned to the fact that, you know, they'll expect President Trump to say something during the election campaign, and what he'll say and what he'll do will cause the leaders to obviously have to respond in some way, shape, or form.
Does it hurt Pierre Poilievre every time Donald Trump comes out and says something about punishing Canada, John? Does that damage his campaign?
No, not at all. In fact, I think it actually helps Pierre. Pierre has been pretty consistent from the time he became leader of the Conservative Party up until the election about, you know, wanting to do things that are important to our economy, namely cut taxes and help the housing starts and put in some common sense immigration policies, all of which help the economy and all of which will help, gird ourselves from what might be coming down from the U.S. But I think what Canadians are going to be looking for is a leader who they believe is going to be best equipped and has the experience and the know-how to deal with what's going to be coming from our American partner. And I think Pierre has been pretty clear on how he would handle it, and pretty understanding of the implications that are going to be coming from the U.S. when it comes to tariffs. But I believe that, you know, obviously they're all talking about President Trump and how they can deal with President Trump. But I actually think that Pierre is best positioned for him to be able to deal with it because he's got the experience. He's been in Parliament. He understands that he's been a cabinet minister and understands the relationship between Canada and the U.S. and how we can't take it for granted anymore.
John, it is day 4 of the election campaign, and all of the party leaders have addressed exactly what you've been talking about, the cost of living crisis. We just heard Jagmeet Singh announcing a tax cut. The Liberals and Conservatives already did that very early on. What else stands out to you about this campaign? Is that going to be the big issue, the economy?
I think it will be. In fact, I think it should be. I think, you know, Canadians have been really anxious about the economy for years now, and they've been talking about the fact that prices of gas and groceries have been going up, and inflation has been going up over the course of the last little while. So there's no doubt that anxiety that Canadians are facing has been reflected in some of the policies that we're seeing coming out of the various political parties and the various political leaders. So do I think that economy is going to be an issue that is going to be, you know, front and center for the rest of the campaign? Yes. I think there'll be variations of that where people will talk about, you know, housing. And we saw a couple of announcements that Pierre made on the housing starts and being sure that we actually have shovels in ground. It's one thing to talk about housing. It's another thing to actually get housing built. And we got to stop talking about it and start getting it done. And I think Pierre has been really, really strong on that issue. But the economy is going to be one where I think they're all going to be talking about mostly about cutting taxes and giving some relief to Canadians over the course of the next little while. And then whoever becomes prime minister on the 28th of April, one of the first things they're going to do is actually act on some of those tax cuts and some of the relief for Canadians, because Canadians will expect it.
All right, John Capobianco, conservative political strategist and senior vice president at Fleishman Hillard Highroad. Good to be with you as always. Thanks for this, John.